Ungrateful, my father muttered, and my stepmother's laughter followed, sharp and familiar, like cruelty was their shared secret. The others at the table joined in, polite, practiced. I stayed still, my smile pretending the words didn't sting. You're right, I said quietly. I should thank you for showing me what love isn't. The room froze. Declan's grin disappeared. Vivian's glass shook. Sterling's stare stayed ice cold. I stood, lifted my glass. Here's to the last time you'll ever see me. And I meant every word. My name is Patricia Draven, the daughter they tried to erase from their story. But tonight, I chose to erase myself on my own terms. Before I tell you everything, say hi in the comments or tell me where you're watching from. It helps to know I'm not alone, because this isn't just revenge. It's revelation. The silence that followed me home that night wasn't peace. It was punishment. No clinking glasses. No hollow laughter. Just the low hum of the refrigerator and the echo of everything I'd lost. I opened my laptop, and the ghost appeared in pixels, my law school graduation, my name announced across the stage. I scanned the crowd for my family. Empty seats. Rows of strangers cheering, none of them mine. Hours later, a message from Vivian. Sorry, we couldn't miss Declan's birthday. It's once in a lifetime. Once in a lifetime. So was mine. I told myself to forgive, to understand, to move on. But some wounds don't fade, they harden. Then came the second blow. An email from the bank. Subject, account activity notice. My mother's education fund gone. Authorization signature, Sterling Draven. When I called, his tone was calm, almost proud. Declan needed a push. You'll manage. That voice, even cold, cut deeper than any scream ever could. 2 jobs, 3 loans, hands trembling from fatigue. Still, I smiled when people asked how I was. Nights bled into mornings. Coffee replaced sleep. I studied contracts by candlelight when the power was cut off. Vivian called once, not to ask how I was, but to boast that Declan's startup made it into a magazine. Her tone was therapy. Isn't that exciting, she said. I stayed silent, staring at the blinking cursor on my resume, wondering if dignity could fit between the lines. Because that's what good daughters do, they stay quiet. They endure. But silence doesn't heal, it festers. They wiped away my memories, but not the proof of what they'd done. The day I decided to leave Austin, the city itself felt heavier. Even the air whispered their names, Sterling, Vivian, Declan. Every billboard, every headline reminded me that silence never saved me. I packed one suitcase, my laptop, the evidence, and the photo of my mother, the only one they hadn't erased. Rowena Vance, my mother's sister, was the last person in the family who had ever looked at me with kindness. I hadn't seen her since the funeral. Back then, she held my hand and whispered, "You're not alone." Santa Fe was 600 miles of quiet, dust, desert, and a long road toward answers. The sun bled into the horizon, painting the sky with something that almost looked like forgiveness. When she opened the door, her eyes carried decades, calm, tired, understanding. She didn't ask what brought me there, only said, "You're ready this time, aren't you?" Inside, the air smelled of cedar and paper, stacks of old letters, yellowed photographs, and a hush heavy with truth waiting to be let out. She carried out a small wooden box, corners dulled, its lid scratched by age. "Your mother wanted this kept safe," she murmured. "I held on to it until you were strong enough to see it." Inside lay the original will, my mother's handwriting steady and deliberate. The education fund was marked solely in my name. No transfers, no exceptions. My throat closed. It wasn't the money. It was proof she believed in me, proof that love, once, had existed without condition. I ran my fingers over her name, tracing the graceful loops of her signature like a prayer. For the first time in years, I could almost hear her voice, quiet, certain, alive. Rowena spread papers across the table, bank statements, transaction records, all tracing back to one source, Declan's startup. Then she paused and handed me another file. Technical logs, access times. Someone had remotely entered my computer. The same week Declan had helped me set up my Wi-Fi. The sting of that stolen project came flooding back, the humiliation of watching it reappear under his name. I had blamed myself back then, but it hadn't been me. Piece by piece, it all began to fit together. The forgotten graduation, the missing funds, the sabotaged work, threads woven into the same cruel pattern. Why didn't you tell me earlier? I asked. Because you weren't ready, Rowena replied softly. You still needed to believe their love was real. Her words didn't shatter me. They steadied me, because I finally understood. I looked at the evidence spread before me. Ink, signatures, dates that refused to lie. What filled me now wasn't anger. It was clarity. Cold, precise, burning cleaner than rage. The story I'd been fed was a lie, and the truth at last belonged to me. They thought silence would bury me, but silence can always be broken. Back in Austin, the city felt unfamiliar, more like a stage I had already outgrown. Morning light crawled across the kitchen table when the courier knocked. A white envelope, thick, gold embossed, the Draven family crest stamped into the seal. Inside, a letter dressed in polished legal courtesy. In the spirit of family harmony, we invite you to voluntarily withdraw from the estate and trust planning process. Words like goodwill and understanding scattered across the page, confetti disguising a blade. I read every sentence carefully. It wasn't an invitation. It was exile masked as diplomacy. They wanted me to disappear and pretend it was my choice. For a moment, I almost laughed. Even now, they still believe control could hide behind manners. I poured a glass of wine, though the clock hadn't reached noon. The warmth steadied my hand as I signed my name. Then, beneath the printed lines, I added my own. I don't want a cent from those who never wanted me, but I will keep the truth. The pen trembled slightly, not from hesitation, but release. Each stroke severed one more thread tying me to their illusion of love. When the ink dried, it looked like a promise. I sealed the envelope and placed it aside. They'd assumed they'd won, that I had finally given in. But surrender and silence are not the same thing. That was the folder of evidence glowed on the screen. Emails, posters, signatures, the will itself. Years of ghosts now turned into proof. I wrote a subject line. You should all see this. No accusations. No explanations. Just 4 attachments dropped into their inboxes like grenades. When I pressed send, the click sounded final, the close of a door that would never open again. Hours later, the headlines erupted. The Dallas Tribune, the Draven cover-up, stolen funds, erased names, family lies. That evening was the Draven Foundation Gala. Chandeliers gleamed like they were desperate to outshine disgrace. Camera flashes burst like lightning across composed faces pretending not to know. Vivian stood before the crowd, her smile fracturing like a porcelain mask. Sterling's jaw locked tight, his fists pressed pale against the table's edge. The murmurs around us spread, sharp, cutting, impossible to ignore. The orchestra stumbled mid-note. Declan was nowhere to be found. Gone, just like their integrity. I didn't clap. I didn't cheer. I simply watched truth do what vengeance never could. Their empire didn't collapse because I tore it down. It crumbled because it was hollow. By sunrise, denial had become their anthem. Declan called it defamation. Sterling labeled it treachery. Vivian swore it was fiction. They flooded the media with flawless statements. Our daughter is unwell. She's been struggling for years. Please respect our privacy. The same old trick. Bury the truth by burying me. I didn't defend myself. I didn't protest. I just watched their empire coil inward, strangled by its own lies. Then my phone buzzed. Rowena. Her voice was steady, almost serene. Kais, she said, the name only my mother used. There's one more thing. Check your email. Inside waited an affidavit, official, notarized. A statement from my former law firm's HR department. Every accusation validated. The evidence logs pointed straight to Declan's login credentials, remote access from his account. The same weekend he'd helped me set up my Wi-Fi. I stared at the document, breath trapped in my chest. It wasn't suspicion anymore. It was fact, signed, sealed, and undeniable. I forwarded it to Nora Whitlow, the journalist who'd published the first expose. My message held only 2 words: use this. By midday, headlines blazed like wildfire. Corporate theft confirmed. Evidence links Draven heir to stolen work. News anchors dissected every detail on live television. Clips from the gala ran beside bank statements. Social media erupted. Hashtags, screenshots, timelines. Truth spread faster than their excuses ever could. The fallout was immediate. Dravener's stock nosedived within hours. Clients withdrew. Investors disappeared. Silence became their loudest confession. Sterling's Veterans Foundation severed ties. His portraits vanished from every brochure. His board seat quietly erased. Vivian's charity galas indefinitely postponed. No one wanted her name on their banners. And Declan, the heir, the golden son, the family's pride, had suddenly gone missing. I didn't need confrontation. They were already trapped inside the mirror of their own deceit. That evening, the city glowed gold under the setting sun. A beauty far too gentle for the ruins it illuminated. My phone rang again. Vivian. I let it go to voicemail. Her voice cracked through the speaker. We've lost everything because of you. I hope you're proud. I listened halfway, then deleted it. And for the first time, I understood this wasn't about pride. It wasn't about revenge. It was about release. No anger, no triumph, just stillness, the kind that comes after a storm. Because it wasn't me who destroyed them. It was the truth they'd built their lives upon, collapsing beneath its own weight. They wanted to rewrite history. Instead, history remembered me. A week later, I set a small dinner table in my apartment. Nothing extravagant: roast chicken, garlic bread, a bottle of red. Around me sat Jonah, steady as ever. Nora, sharp and smiling. Rowena, quiet. Her presence like a bridge back to my mother. We ate, talked, laughed softly. No cameras, no family emblems, no rehearsed words. Just people, real, imperfect, free. For the first time, I looked around and thought, this is family. Not by blood, not by obligation, but by truth and by choice. When the plates were cleared, I drove across town to Oakwood Cemetery. The streets were hushed, the air thick with the kind of silence that follows survival. I found her name carved in gray stone. My mother, the woman who'd never stopped believing in me, even when the world tried to erase me. I knelt, placed a folded letter beneath her headstone. It said, I kept your name clean. I am free now. The wind whispered through the oaks, and for a moment, I could almost hear her voice. Not words, just peace. Back home, the voicemail light blinked red. Vivian again, her voice full of venom, blame, and regret. I deleted it halfway through. The silence that followed wasn't empty anymore. It belonged to me. I sat by the window, the lights of Austin flickering against the dark. They'd called me ungrateful, but I had never been more grateful in my life. Grateful for the strength to walk away, for the chance to rewrite my story, for the calm that only truth could bring. Because sometimes peace isn't something given, it's something chosen. If my story reached you somehow, say hello in the comments. Tell me where you're watching from. It helps to remember that none of us walk alone.